Amelie gets tired of the feeling of the blanket on her legs, kicking it off, far away from her mattress. She rolls onto her side, then her back onto her side, before just sitting up. She huffs a breath of air, feeling her messy bangs drift over her wide-open eyes. She gets to her feet, her brain fully awake, forcing her out of any dreamland. She looks to her left, seeing Abram deep in sleep at his bed, snoring quietly to himself. Echnid sleeps at her desk, snoring in much the same way she was when they first saw her, and the strange old man slumbering on the floor hasn't moved an inch. It's just her here. Well, and that creature, but it's been far too quiet as of late. Amelie's eyes dart down each aisle as she walks around the parts she has never visited, seeing the near-identical lineups of each one. The closer she gets to the far-end walls of the library, the more she feels her feet shake. The books on the shelves wobble, some falling off the shelves, forming a strange version of word landmines she must avoid. And then she sees it. The Crypt Walker. He is still patrolling, even this late at night. Stomping down aisles, shoving shelves to the side, his eyes darting towards any noise or movement. He walks into a shelf that is next to a pillar, blocking it from moving out of his way. Taken aback by the pushback from the bookshelf, he stops in his tracks, glaring daggers at the shelf. The Crypt Talker hoists its head high into the sky, higher, higher, until it's nearly at the roof, towering above even the massive shelves. Its beady eyes have no life in them, and its grin keeps revealing its sharp, pointy teeth. But she can feel its anger. Its mouth gapes slowly. Ah, ah! Amelie flies to the floor, her hands flying over her ears on the way down. It makes no difference. The ear-piercing screech slips between her fingers, drilling her head until her eyes water. A loud crashing noise hits as the screech comes to a stop. The loud stomps of the Crypt Walker leading away from the ground she shelters on. Her hands remain glued straight to her ears long after the ringing ends. A high, thin ringing stays inside her ears even when she lifts her hands. Slowly, she lets her hands droop to the floor, hoisting herself back to her feet. The Crypt Walker is far gone at this point. The wreck it left in its path is ever present. Many shelves are displaced, some laying flat on the ground, others leaning against each other. Books litter the floor, some open, pulling other unopened books into it. Amelie walks over one of the book piles, taking a seat in the center of them. She picks random books up, searching for anything that catches her eye. And then she sees it. Pip and the Pebble Pond. A cute short book with a soft blue background and a large oak tree sitting behind a cute pond made from pebbles in a circle. Amelie's eyes look up and around, making sure Echnid isn't watching her. She can almost hear Echnid's voice already. Books are entered with preparation, not curiosity. She hugs her sleeves a little tighter, just one peek. She pulls the covers apart, revealing the words on pages. But those words don't stay there for long. Pages fly out of the books beneath her, swirling as if wind is tossing them around. They swirl in circles around her, forming a paper tornado that soon enough blocks out every inch of the dusty library. The noise of pages crinkling against each other drowns out everything else, till it can replace even the ringing inside Amelie's ears. Then the papers all stop at once, falling to the floor as if the wind was never there to begin with. Her shoulders remain tense, waiting for something to twist, stretch, or disappear. Nothing does. She stands inside a small one-room cabin made from brown wood logs. The cabin is small enough that she can see all of it without moving. A wooden bed, stone fireplace, little kitchen, and sturdy table are all it holds. Yet somehow it doesn't feel empty. It feels peaceful. A mirror sits in the corner, and approaching it, she feels her cheeks blush. A light blue colonial dress replaces her usual dirty clothes. Its long skirt pools around her feet with a matching bonnet tied neatly beneath her chin. Pretty? She twirls her dress, and when she finishes the spin, something outside the window catches her eye. A stampede or something of frogs are hopping down a hill together, beelining straight for the pond she saw on the cover. The pond is circled crudely by pebbles stacked on top of each other, water leaking through the cracks between the stones. Although it's terribly made, she's sure the water is useful to whoever made it. Amelie rushes outside, watching as the large, bumpy frogs charge directly into the rock walls, leaving a carnage in their path. Kita kith kitta tick! A small, dark brown, rock-looking crab creature sprints across the grass field. It sprints sideways to the now pile of rocks, looking down at it with water forming under its black eyes. It falls to a more sitting-like position, staring at the pond silently. "It's okay," Amelie says, holding her hands together while standing a few feet away. "Teek!" It screeches, jumping to its feet and putting more distance between them. It starts shaking visibly, the rock-like body making grinding noises as it does. I won't hurt you," Amelie says, dropping to her knees to seem less large. The crab creature retreats even farther back, its eyes darting between Amelie and its fallen pond. "I can help you build it again," she asks, but the crab creature sits in silence. This book world is a lot more open and comforting than any other that she has been in. The sky is a bright blue with tons of puffy white clouds that with some imagination can make all sorts of shapes and creatures. Her cabin has flowers decorating the outside and has a cute bird-shaped mailbox beside the door. Parallel to her cabin on the other side of the pond sits a boulder with a small hole carved out of it and a wooden door placed to keep the light outside of it. Beside the boulder sits land where the soft grass is replaced by a field of rocks of all different sizes. "Can I bring some rocks over for you?" Amelie asks, but the crab stares blankly at her. Amelie skips across the field, gathering rocks until her arms shake. She drops the rocks like an avalanche in a pile beside the now fallen pond before skipping over again and again, until a respectable-sized pile of rocks has built up. There! She takes a deep breath, falling backwards like a trust fall, so the soft grass can catch her. Tick! Tick! The crab squeaks, but stays far away from her. Amelie yawns, looking up at the clouds, making out what she can in the sky. A bird with its wings stretched outward, holding its baby chicks near. A cat's tail curling upwards. A door standing alone in the field. "I used to cloud watch with my mom." Amelie closes her eyes with a smile. "We would see who could find the most hearts." She puts her hands forward as if she's trying to grab the clouds. "Can you understand me?" Amelie rolls onto her side to face the crab, startling it and making it move another step backwards. "It's okay if you don't. I'm just talking to myself anyways." The crab looks at the rocks Amelie gathered him before gazing back at his pond. Then he starts stepping forward, one step at a time, his eyes never leaving Amelie's shape. Amelie yawns, closing her eyes as she does so, and by the time her eyes open, she sees the sun going down. It goes down at a comically fast rate, as if it was an asteroid crashing down into the horizon. The moon shoots up at the sky, and soon enough, nighttime has dawned upon them. The frog posse starts jumping back to where they came from, over the hill and into the distance. They take a different path this time, going far to the side and avoiding the pond. The crab creature starts scurrying over to its cave house, leaving Amelie alone in the grass. "Good night," she says quietly, yawning as she climbs to her feet. She retreats into her lodge, laying down in the surprisingly soft bed. It feels like it has only been an hour or two since she got here, but she feels exhausted. Maybe the time being faster means so does her exhaustion. Or maybe the small amount of manual labor shows that she is weak. But nonetheless, her eyelids force themselves close. Until her eyes reopen, the bright sun pushing through the primitive window blinds. She uncovers herself, stretching with a big crack, before she gets to her feet. She lifts the blinds up, allowing the light to pour in, and feeling surprisingly well rested. She sees the crab creature taking rocks from her pile and stacking them in a circle much like they were before. Amelie realizes this could be her moment to gain this crab's trust, but she hesitates for a moment. What is the goal in this book? And how does she get out? She came here for fun, but there is always an end goal that needs to be done in order to leave. Does this crab even matter? She sits back down on the bed, watching the crab as it works. She purses her lips. Helping the crab should have felt nice. Instead, all she could think about was whether it had brought her any closer to leaving. The realization leaves an unpleasant knot in her stomach. She takes a slow breath and pushes the thought away. Tick-tick-ka-dit-bith! The crab's clicking noise is unmistakable. It's much louder and hurried this time, as if it's screaming. Amelie bursts outside, seeing the crab throw itself in front of the oncoming frog stampede. It jumps up and down excitedly, waving its claws back and forth as it chirps its language. Amelie sprints over, standing beside the crab creature and jumping up and down. "Wait! Stop! Watch out!" she yells, flailing her arms back and forth. But they don't. They shove right past her, plopping their sticky feet all over the pebble wall. The wall stands no chance. Rocks fly away from each other, landing scattered across the grass. One of the frogs bumps into Amelie's stomach, forcing her backwards a step, while another launches itself off the side of the pond, sending pebbles tumbling through the air. It is over almost as quickly as it begins. The frogs continue their charge across the field, disappearing over the distant hill without so much as a glance behind them. The pond is gone. Amelie stares at the scattered rocks. Water leaks through the grass where the pond once sat, slowly sinking into the earth. Beside her, the little crab creature stands frozen, its black eyes fixed on the wreckage. Amelie sighs, huffing out a big burst of breath. She falls backwards in a trust fall, letting the soft green grass break her fall. "It's okay," she whispers, rolling onto her side to face the crab creature. "We can build it back again," she smiles. The crab creature looks away from her, back towards his once again fallen wall. "Or not. Why do you want this pond anyways?" She ponders while staring at the frog. If we're going to build this again, we have to change something, or the frogs will just keep breaking it down. Tick, tick, chai, cha, the crab chirps, springing into the air. The moment it lands, it scurries off through the grass. It disappears for only a few seconds before a patch of grass rustles in the distance. The crab pops back up, a shiny silver rock hoisted proudly above its head. Tick! It squeaks. Then it turns and sprints for its cave. The little wooden door flies open just long enough for it to squeeze inside before slamming shut behind him. Amelie stands there awkwardly. Was that a good thing? She has absolutely no idea. But her eyes continue to drift over his cave to the hillside above, the hill that the frogs always come storming down, then to the pond, then to the other side of the pasture, the hill where the frogs disappear into. Amelie squints as she looks at the hill, the sun starting to dawn upon it. Why are the frogs so determined to ruin the pond? Amelie looks down at the scattered rocks. What if they're not? The thought makes her pause. The frogs never stop. They don't linger around the pond. They don't play in it. They don't drink from it. They charge through it and keep going like it's in their way. They're not evil, and they don't seem to have any goals that involve the pond. Judging by their blank faces, they don't seem to think very much at all. If they don't want the pond, then why not go around it? She looks at the open field surrounding the pond. There is plenty of room, enough room for 10 ponds. Her eyes drift back to the little crab's house. Maybe they don't know they can. Amelie jumps to her feet, a twinkle in her eye, as she grabs a stick and hurries across the field. She snaps a long branch from a bush, tucks it under one arm, then gathers a handful of broad leaves from the grass. By the time she reaches the pond again, her arms are full, and her dress is covered in bits of dirt and leaves. Perfect! The next morning, Amelie pushes the cabin door open with her shoulder. A yawn escapes her as she drags a large wooden sign through the grass. Dark circles hang beneath her eyes, and flecks of dried paint stain her sleeves. The sign catches on a rock. Amelie groans, tugs, then groans again. Eventually, she wins. Worth it, she mutters, dragging it the rest of the way to the pond. A scraping noise comes from the boulder across the pond. The little wooden door creaks open, and the crab peeks outside. It takes a few cautious steps into the grass before its eyes land on the sign. It freezes. Tilting its body slightly, it stares at the painted board for several seconds before creeping closer. Amelie watches silently as the crab circles the sign. One claw reaches out and taps the wood. It scurries around to the other side, staring at the painted picture before tilting itself the opposite direction. The crab looks from the sign to the pond, then back to the sign again. A smile tugs at Amelie's lips. "I know," she says. "It's not very good." The crab tilts its body one last time before turning away from the sign. It scurries over to the pile of rocks and begins carrying them one at a time toward the pond. Soon enough, the familiar sound of stone scraping against stone fills the field once more. Amelie watches for a while. The crab works much faster than she ever could, stacking rocks with surprising precision despite the size of its claws. Every now and then it gets distracted by something before returning back to work. A yawn escapes her, and the grass feels softer than her bed ever could. Her eyelids become curtains that no person could ever hold, as all noise from her world disappears. Until it doesn't, something clicks, then clicks again. A distant chirping follows. Amelie's brow furrows. She pulls her arms closer beneath her head, trying to sink back into sleep. The noise only grows louder, more frantic. Tick, 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 tick. Her eyes crack open, starting to water, as a screen of blur blocks her vision. The crab waves its claws frantically, chirping at the top of its lungs. The frogs pay it no mind. They pour over the hill like a flood, charging straight toward the pond. Amelie's eyes flick to the sign. The frogs don't. The first frog barrels straight into the wooden post, knocking the sign sideways. Another hops over it, then another. Within seconds, the entire stampede is racing through the pond, scattering rocks across the field, as if neither the sign nor the crab had ever been there. Amelie watches in silence as the last frog disappears into the distance. The pond is gone. Again. Her eyes drift toward the sign. It lays crooked in the grass, one side buried beneath a pile of rocks. Oh! The word slips out before she can stop it. A warm feeling creeps into her cheeks. Just a few minutes ago, she had been so proud of it. She had spent all night painting it, carrying it, setting it up, and the frogs hadn't even looked at it. Amelie hugs her knees to her chest. It had probably looked a lot smarter in her head. Across the field, the crab remains motionless. Its eyes linger on the ruined pond for several long seconds. Slowly, its claws droop back to its sides. Tick! The crab turns away from the wreckage and begins gathering rocks once more. It doesn't scurry this time. It simply walks from stone to stone, carrying each one back to the pond before returning for another. Amelie watches in silence. Even after all that, the little crab is still trying. She hugs her knees a little tighter. "How am I supposed to stop them?" she whispers. Her eyes drift toward the hill the frogs always come charging over. There are so many of them. Even if she stood in front of them herself, they would simply knock her over. Maybe she could build the wall taller, but then they'd only knock over a taller wall instead. She could move the pond somewhere else, but would that even matter? The frogs might just follow it. Or maybe the little crab wanted it here for a reason. She lets out a quiet sigh. There has to be something I'm missing. Her eyes wander across the field, following the trail of scattered rocks left behind by the stampede. Most are ordinary gray stones, but every now and then something catches the sunlight just right. A few smooth silver rocks glimmer among the grass, almost hidden unless she looks directly at them. Silver? She pushes herself to her feet and walks over, kneeling beside one. It feels strangely smooth beneath her fingertips, almost polished. She turns it over once in her hand before setting it back where she found it. A loud burst of clicking pulls her attention away. Tick, tick, tick. The little crab comes sprinting across the field much faster than before. It skids to a stop beside the silver rock, its whole body practically vibrating with excitement. Without a moment's hesitation, it scoops the stone into its claws, hugging it tightly against its chest. "You can have—" She starts to speak, but the crab is already scurrying away. She gets to her feet, starting towards the hill the frogs disappeared into. She brushes the bits of grass from her dress before beginning the long walk across the field. The hill had never looked very tall from beside the pond, but the closer she gets, the more it seems to grow. She places a foot against the slope and starts climbing. The grass gives way beneath her shoes, forcing her to grab handfuls of it just to keep from sliding backward. Every few steps, she stops to catch her breath before climbing again. Her legs begin to ache. Her sleeves drag through the dirt as she pulls herself over patches too steep to simply walk. "I didn't," she pants, "think it'd be this high." Halfway up, she steals a glance behind her. The pond already looks tiny from here, surrounded by little more than a ring of scattered stones. The cabin has become little more than a brown dot against the field. The little crab waddles out from its stone house, straining against a strange wooden cart no bigger than itself. 4 uneven wheels bump through the grass behind it, carrying a pile of smooth silver stones stacked almost to the top. The farther it pushes, the slower the cart rolls. When it reaches the bottom of the hill, the wheels sink into the soft earth. The crab throws its whole body against the handle, its tiny legs slipping beneath it as the cart barely moves an inch. Without thinking, she turns around and carefully climbs back down, her shoes sliding through the grass, until she reaches the bottom once more. She steps down, picking the cart up and holding it to her chest. "I can help." She smiles at the crab. Tick, tick. The crab looks back and forth from the rocks, and the girl, clearly not enthralled by the idea of someone else holding his rocks. Ugh. She takes a deep breath, sitting the cart down into the dirt so her arms can take a break. She finishes the last few steps up the hill, reaching the top and taking a look down onto the other side. A little village rests quietly in the valley below. Dozens of tiny wooden homes sit scattered across the field, each built from smooth branches and rounded logs. Small bridges cross narrow streams that weave between the houses, while little gardens filled with flowers and vegetables surround nearly every home. Thin trails of smoke curl from stone chimneys, disappearing into the bright blue sky. Tiny crab creatures wander between the houses, many pushing little wooden carts much like the one she had helped carry up the hill. Some stack silver stones into neat little piles, while others chatter excitedly to one another in their strange clicking language. But they aren't alone. Small mossy creatures no taller than Amelie's knees wander the village alongside them. Their round bodies are covered in soft green moss, with little mushrooms sprouting from their backs like tiny umbrellas. They carry woven baskets nearly as large as themselves, stopping every so often to trade fruit, flowers, or bundles of herbs with the crabs before continuing on their way. Amelie follows the little dirt path into the village. The houses are even smaller up close. Some lean ever so slightly to one side, their roofs stitched together from smooth pieces of bark. Tiny flower boxes rest beneath the windows, overflowing with little blue and yellow blossoms. Wooden buckets sit outside nearly every front door, slowly filling from little streams of water that wind through the streets. A few crab creatures wave as they pass one another, their little carts rattling over the stones beneath their feet. One building near the middle of the village makes Amelie slow to a stop. It has the biggest porch she has seen so far. Little wooden wagons are lined up in neat rows beneath the awning, each one no bigger than a basket. Beside them sit tiny shovels, smooth wooden scoops, woven baskets, and curious little brushes with soft white bristles. Shelves along the wall are filled with polished shells, little carved stone figures, and round glass bottles holding bright blue water that sparkles whenever the sunlight shines through them. Near the doorway, several little crab children gather around a shallow wooden tub. Tiny wooden boats drift across the water while one of the children laughs, gently blowing them from one side to the other. Above them, a round wooden sign swings softly in the breeze. A smiling little crab is painted across the front, happily pushing an overflowing wagon of silver stones. Amelie steps onto the little wooden porch and gently pushes the door open. A tiny brass bell gives a cheerful ding. Every crab inside the shop stops. Little eyes turn toward the doorway. One crab drops the brush it had been using to polish a stone. Another nearly fumbles the bundle of rope in its claws. A moment later, excited chirping fills the shop as several little crabs hurry over, circling around Amelie's feet and looking up at her with wide, curious eyes. The shop is much bigger inside than it looked from the road. Wooden shelves line every wall, packed neatly with little wagons, woven baskets, polished scoops, sturdy ropes, climbing hooks, and tiny wooden wheels waiting to be fitted onto carts. One corner is filled with smooth river stones carved into little animals, while another holds rows of curious glass jars where tiny streams of water swirl gently around on their own. Along the back wall, bundles of river reeds, soft moss cushions, little brushes for cleaning stones, and padded cloth pouches hang from wooden pegs, each one just the right size for a crab to carry. Amelie follows the little crab through the marketplace, watching him proudly carry his shiny silver stone between his claws. Every few steps, he glances back to make sure she is still following before continuing onward. Wooden stalls line both sides of the winding dirt path, their colorful banners swaying lazily in the afternoon breeze. Merchants shout over one another, advertising baked sweets, polished trinkets, carved wooden animals, and all sorts of strange things she doesn't recognize. A glimmer catches her eye. Amelie slows to a stop. Nestled atop a cushion of moss sits a silver tiara, unlike any she has ever seen. Delicate antlers curl upward from either side, branching gracefully like the limbs of a young oak tree. Tiny silver leaves sprout from the antlers, while pale green gemstones dangle between them like drops of morning dew. For a moment, she simply stares. It looks like something a forest fairy would wear, or maybe a princess from one of her books. The merchant notices her immediately. "A beautiful piece, isn't it?" The old woman smiles. Amelie nods. Her fingers drift toward the tiara before stopping halfway. She hoists the tiara up into the air, feeling its fragile branches shake between her fingers. She sets it upon her head, turning to see her shape in a mirror nearby. The girl staring back at her almost doesn't feel real. The silver branches curl upward from either side of her head, their tiny leaves catching the sunlight whenever she moves. Pale green gemstones sway gently beneath them, sparkling like drops of morning dew. The tiara transforms her messy blonde hair into something out of a fairy tale. A warmth spreads through her chest. For a moment, she can almost feel the wind against her face. She imagines herself running through endless flower fields without a single fence in sight, her feet carrying her wherever she wants to go. No screaming, no hiding, no waiting for the next bad day to arrive. Just blue skies stretching forever above her head. The feeling is so sudden that it catches her off guard. She feels pretty. It fits you, the moss creature standing nearby speaks, its voice shaky and pitchy. Thanks, Amelie says, closing her eyes as she sits the crown back on the moss podium. A tag sitting beneath it shows a silvery rock-like drawing with the number 10 scribbled on beside it. Maybe one day. She continues through the shop, seeing the crab pile up a few objects onto a new wooden sled-like object. On a rack beside him sit soft-looking rocks, as if they're made from some sort of cotton. They come in all sorts of colors and shapes. Some are round, others shaped like stars, hearts, flowers, and clouds. Unlike the polished gemstones and silver trinkets scattered throughout the market, these rocks look strangely plain. Amelie reaches out and picks up a pale blue one shaped like a cloud. It squishes. She gives it another squeeze. The rock slowly flattens beneath her fingers before puffing back into shape the moment she lets go. A wooden sign hangs above the rack. Worry rocks. Let them carry your worries while you rest. Amelie tilts her head, looking at the rock fold between her fingers. Is this real? She asks the moss creature. Before bed, you tell the rock what's bothering you. Then you place it beneath your pillow. It squeaks. Amelie looks back down at the cloud-shaped stone. And it helps? Maybe, the rabbit says with a shrug. Or maybe people just sleep better after saying their worries out loud. Amelie gently rolls the rock between her hands. The material is impossibly soft, and something about it makes her shoulders loosen without her realizing it. Tick, tick! The crab pulls at the bottom of her clothing, pointing toward the sled. Amelie blinks and follows after him. The little sled is already piled with supplies from around the market. Objects. The crab scurries around the sled proudly before tapping the pile of silver stones resting inside. Then he points at the worry rock, then the stones, then the worry rocks again. Oh, thank you. She passes it over to him. Cha, tick, tick. He points hurriedly at his cart of stones sitting lone beside the entranceway. Amelie jogs over, carrying the cart to the register where the moss creature from earlier stands expectantly. Have your eyes settled upon something worth carrying home? The moss creature asks. Yes. Amelie pushes the cart towards the creature. Yes. Amelie pushes the cart towards the creature. The moss creature inspects the contents one item at a time. It rolls the worry stone between its fingers, giving an approving nod before setting it aside. The crab's collection of tools receives the same treatment, each earning a quiet hum of approval. Everything appears to be in order. The creature reaches beneath the counter and produces a small brass key attached to a ring of braided vines. Your puddle hopper is waiting in the stable. Amelie blinks. My what? The puddle hopper included with the harvesting kit, of course. The moss creature extends the key toward her. Third stall on the left. Do mind the tongue. They become excited around strangers. The crab immediately begins bouncing up and down. Kita-tick! Kita-tick! Amelie accepts the key and stares at it for a moment. There's a frog? After everything that has happened here, How on earth does he want a frog of his own? The stable sits just beyond the marketplace. Rows of wooden stalls stretch beneath a long roof, each housing a different puddle hopper. Some are green, some brown, and one appears to be asleep standing up. The moment the crab spots the stall marked with their key, it sprints ahead. Tick! A plump green puddle hopper lifts its head. Its throat inflates like a balloon before it lets out a croak, its eyes having seemingly no thoughts behind them. "You actually wanted a frog," Amelie mutters. The crab jumps up and down, ticking at Amelie as it stares up at the padlock. Okay. Amelie puts an extra skip in her step as she sticks the key in, turning it to the right and hearing a click. The top curved bar separates, and the thick steel padlock tumbles down to the floor with a thwomp. Tick, tick, tick. The crab runs in hurriedly, grabbing the rope attached at the frog's neck. The puddle hopper walks forward like a dog behind its owner as the crab connects the rope to the front of his sled. Cha-tick! The crab climbs aboard his sled like a train conductor, beckoning Amelie to join him with his claw. The sled has very little space, especially with both of them riding atop it. She sits at the back of it, carefully holding her knees to her chest to avoid kicking the crab or his items off the front. Surprisingly, the sled holds flat, and Amelie feels no tilt or threat of falling off during the ride. The puddle hopper, who is half the size of Amelie, hops forward, one jump at a time, pulling the sled smoothly behind it. Amelie reaches downward, grabbing her worrystone to squeeze close to her chest. Oddly, she does feel some sort of comfort. Maybe comfort isn't the word, but her brain seems to slow down in its permanent race to think of the feeling of cloth and beads between her fingers. Behind the crab's hind leg lays a small shiny object, and as Amelie leans forward, she can make out that it's a thimble. No markings lay upon it, and nothing feels special about it, but it is a pretty large thimble. Beside her feet lies a large white plastic bucket with a bright green lid. An image of a bee's nest filled with so much honey it is dripping out, and beneath it sits upon it below brown text that boldly says, "Grip wax." Why do you want to build that rock wall so much? Amelie squeezes her worry rock, feeling it expand back up as she lets go. Tick, tick! It looks back at her and squeaks, but immediately returns his gaze forward. "I can't understand you. I wish I could." She sees the frog stampede form on the hill behind them as they near the familiar pasture. Is the pond just for water? Tick-cha-cha, it says quieter as the sled comes to a halt beside the crab's cave. Cha-tick. It beckons her to follow him as he hops up, holstering the rope around his mailbox. It opens the cave, carrying his thimble inside and disappearing from Amelie's view. A few moments pass when the crab peeks back out the door. Tick. It continues beckoning her to come inside. "I can't come inside." She lowers herself onto her stomach so she can peek inside. The cave is somehow both cramped and cozy. Shelves carved directly into the stone walls hold all sorts of treasures, each one arranged with far more care than Amelie would have expected. Shiny pebbles sit in neat little stacks beside buttons, paper clips, bottle caps, bits of colored glass, and other objects she can't immediately identify. A pile of silver and gold trinkets occupies an entire corner of the room, catching the fading sunlight that spills through the doorway and scattering little sparkles across the stone walls. Above it hangs a framed photograph, slightly crooked, showing the crab standing beside another crab with a lighter shell. Both hold their claws high in the air, and somehow Amelie can tell they're smiling. A tiny moss bed rests near the back wall, beneath a patchwork blanket made from scraps of cloth, while the newly purchased thimble sits proudly atop a shelf, as if it has always belonged there. The whole cave feels less like a hole carved into a boulder and more like a home, every strange little object tucked into a place chosen just for it. "Your house is really cute," Amelie whispers, forcing a small grin before yawning. Tick. The crab's body slumps for a moment as it slowly faces away from her. It slowly walks to the picture frame, grabbing it between its pinchers and carrying it back over to Amelie. Cha-cha-cha. It points to the frame and then towards the pond outside. "You're doing it for them?" Amelie asks. The crab stares at her silently. "I see." Silence sits between them for a moment. "Well, tomorrow, let's use that wax you bought and actually finish the wall then, right?" Tick-tick. He nods. "Good night, friend." She smiles, and the crab waves before the door pushes her to stay in the outside world. "Good night, frog." She says it awkwardly. The frog croaks. She feels a wave of something hit her inside her heart as she sneaks back through the grass pasture. She stops in her tracks, looking down at her feet as she exhales. She groans, leaning backward and falling back into the grass. She looks upwards for a moment before closing her eyes, but her brain is spinning. Then she feels something wet moving on her arm. Her heart jolts as her arms get covered in goosebumps, swiping her arms up and down in a panic with her hands. She looks down at the ground, seeing smaller rock-like creatures moving around, small ball-like objects with hard shells and many pink, wet legs. "Ew-ha!" She jumps backwards, watching them continue to crawl towards her. She hears wet sopping noises and looks back down to her arms, seeing the crabs crawl outwards from her skin, pushing their way to the surface. She feels no pain, but her eyes twitch, open as wide as they can as they dig their way out of her flesh. "Stop! Help!" she shouts, retreating backwards as the line of creatures continues crawling towards her, more and more falling off her arm onto the floor like water during a storm. She trips over her own feet, falling backwards and breathing heavily as the storm of bugs sprint her way. "No!" she screams, closing her eyes. "Tick, tick, tick!" She hears the crab clicking. "Help! Help!" She jumps upwards, clinging on to the crab creature. She looks downward, barely able to speak or stop moving through her shallow breaths, but there isn't anything there. Tick, tick! The crab tilts its head. Amelie's chest goes up and down with each deep breath as she looks around hurriedly. She looks down at her skin, seeing no holes, rubbing her arms up and down to feel for any bumps. She takes a deep breath. They finish putting the last layer of pebbles on the wall, the crab smearing the grip wax all over them. The crab smacks his claw into the wall, pushing on it to ensure it won't tumble down again. Tick, tick! The crab bounces up and down, doing a spin as it looks at its hard work. "I think we finally did it." She smiles, crossing her arms as they lock eyes. The crab looks back at the wall before its head tilts, something catching its eye. Tick, tick, it whispers, lowering itself to the ground as it digs its claws into the ground beside the wall. Tick, tick, tick. It starts squeaking, hurriedly reaching under and pulling backwards, but it doesn't move, as if it's stuck. Are you... Tick, 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 tick. It bounces back and forth, tugging and tugging, until he flies backwards. Amelie hops to her feet, sprinting over to help it back to its feet. Ah! Amelie jumps backwards immediately, letting the crab roll back to being upside down. Tick, tick. It grunts, getting back to his feet as it rubs his head. In his claws sits one of those small, strange rock creatures, the ones from her arms. It wiggles its legs back and forth. Its eyes, which are on the ends of tendril-like things, peer up at the crab. Tick, tick. The crab pats the rock on its head. The rock creature makes a chirping noise, its eyes swaying back and forth like seaweed in the ocean. Gross, she says, the crab paying her no mind. Then she hears it. Dozens of wet feet hop against the grass in a rhythm she has grown all too familiar with. The crab's eyes snap toward the hill. It hurriedly tucks the little rock creature beneath one claw before scurrying behind the stone wall, peeking over the top just enough to watch. The first frog comes flying down the hill, followed by another, then another, until the entire stampede is racing toward the pond. Amelie braces herself, but a glimmer of hope clings on that the wall will hold up. The first frog slams straight into the wall, but instead of rocks exploding across the field, the wall barely budges. The frog bounces to the side with a croak before continuing around it. More frogs crash into the stones, only to stumble around the barrier or leap clean over the pond. Within moments, the familiar stampede has passed, disappearing into the distance just as quickly as it arrived. Amelie blinks at the pond. Every rock is exactly where it should be. A laugh escapes her before she can stop it. It worked. The crab slowly peeks out from behind the wall, its eyes darting across the pond as if expecting another frog to come charging through. When it realizes the wall is still standing, it lets out a delighted chirp. It hugs the little rock creature against its chest before bouncing happily around the pond, stopping every few hops to admire the wall, as if it can't quite believe it either. "We did it!" Amelie laughs, taking a seat beside the wall. Tick, tick, tick! The crab creature hops up and down. "We did it!" Amelie's smile fades, leaving a slight frown in its place. "We did it. Now what?" she whispers quietly to herself, looking over at the crab. The crab hoists the little rock creature above its head, chirping proudly as the tiny thing kicks its legs through the air. It carries the little creature into its cave, only to come back out moments later with an armful of shiny pebbles. One by one, it places them in front of the little rock creature, who immediately reaches for the brightest one it can find. The crab claps its claws together excitedly. Amelie watches without moving. The frogs continue hopping somewhere beyond the hills. Birds drift across the sky in pairs. Even the breeze seems to know where it's going. The field keeps blowing around, structured exactly where it's meant to be. The crab has a home to return to, a child to care for. Tomorrow it will wake up and rebuild the pond if it needs to. The frogs will keep hopping, the flowers will keep blooming. And Amelie? Amelie stands in the middle of it all, unsure where her feet are supposed to go. A tear lands on the grass before she realizes she's crying. I did it. Another follows. So, why do I feel like this? She hears squeaking, dozens of voices squeaking, coming her way from over the far hill toward the village. She gets to her feet, seeing what feels like every crab and moss creature from the village making their way over. Limitless chatter wipes over the place. Amelie was so used to being quiet. The creatures surrounding their pond. The crab looks at the approaching crowd, to the pond, then down at the little rock creature tucked safely beneath one claw. For a moment, it doesn't move. Then one of the older crabs breaks away from the crowd. Kit-tick! It blinks at him, moving its claws in a pattern. Another follows, then another, surrounding the pond with excited chirps. Claws point toward the stone wall, then the untouched pond behind it. Several crabs hurry over, running their claws along the rocks as if checking that they are real. A few run their crabs through the water as if it feels good. Tick-cha! One of them pats the little crab firmly on the shoulder. Another gently lifts the baby rock creature into the air, earning an indignant squeak before the whole crowd erupts into cheerful clicking. The crab looks around at them all, almost waiting for someone to tell it to leave. But they don't. Instead, one of the older crabs hooks a claw around its shoulder and starts leading it back toward the village. The little crab looks back only once. Its eyes find Amelie. Tick. It stops moving for a moment, then it turns and walks with the others. Goodbye. Amelie waves after it turns its back, and soon enough the pasture returns to silence. She sits there until the sunlight darkens and the wind picks up. We did it. So why does it feel like I failed? Her vision starts to fog as tears hit her cheeks. She stares at the house of her crab friend, feeling so lonely without him here. Brup, brup! The crab's frog croaks from afar, blankly staring at her. What do you want? She sparks, the frog's emotion unchanged. Are you mocking me? Brup! It groans. Well, you're all I have here, so? Amelie walks over to the frog, sitting down on the sled behind it. Take me somewhere. She wipes her eyes. The toad doesn't question her, nor does it judge. Even though Amelie has only had negative thoughts towards it, it drags her forth, deep into the pebble patch where they've collected stones. The patch, which at first seemed like it stretched for miles, finally breaks the horizon. Woods, a forest even, stretches on for somehow even farther. Tall, deep brown trees tower what feels like forever upwards into the sky. A very dark brown soft soil litters the ground with more of the same rocks peeking out of it. Dozens of owls sit high above on branches, squirrels also peeking down at her. Oddly, it doesn't feel dark, even with the moon taking to the sky. Have you been here before? Amelie leans forward towards her frog taxi driver. Broop! It slowly comes to a stop. A large tree stump sits in the center, with moonlight raining above like a spotlight onto it. She approaches it slowly, taking a seat on it. It's wide enough to fit many of hers on it. What would have taken down such a large tree? She lays backwards, looking upwards at the beautiful night sky. All the animals and stars alike are staring at her, as if she is the main star here. She closes her eyes, and soon enough the warm darkness takes her with it. Her eyes seem to reopen by themselves. She stands alone in a field of impossibly tall grass. Fireflies drift between the blades like little stars, rising higher and higher until they become the night sky itself. A deer steps quietly from the darkness. Its coat glows pale gold beneath the stars, and nestled between its antlers rests the delicate fairy tale tiara. Tiny flowers bloom from the silver vines wrapped around the antlers, opening one by one as the deer walks toward her. Amelie reaches out. The deer lowers its head. Just before her fingers touch the tiara, the deer nudges her hand instead. Gentle, the deer turns and begins walking away. Every flower it passes blooms behind it, leaving a winding path through the field. After only a few steps, it looks back, waiting. Okay. She takes one step after it. The sunlight seems to expand, the beams gliding all around and covering each corner of the world in a bright beam, expanding more and more until everything is gone, until it stops. Her eyes slowly dawn as the bright sunlight pours into them. The birds chirp loudly as wind ruffles the leaves on every tree around her. She gets to her feet, stretching her back, before her eyes make eye contact with the frog again. "You stayed here all night?" she asks, walking over to it and sitting back down on the sled. "Brup," it croaks blankly. "Thank you. We can go back now if you'd like." She smiles softly. The frog starts its path back toward their pasture, not complaining, not even speaking. Amelie wonders if it's good to live life that way, or if goals are purpose, whatever they may be. He seems happy enough, but Amelie knows deep down she could never truly feel that way. "I'll be here." Amelie hops off in the center of the rock patch, and the frog slowly comes to a halt. "You can go back if you want. I can walk back." She smiles softly. "Or you can stay with me. I don't mind." Grrr-lump. It groans before sitting back down, blankly staring off into the distance. Amelie falls to her knees and gets to work, tossing the boring gray rocks aside. The uncomfortable feeling of round rocks digging into her knees doesn't dissuade her, as the tiara is the only thing on her mind, either for a selfish reason of feeling pretty or a search of purpose here. She has found her goal, and all she needs is to find 10 of those shiny little rocks. The first shiny stone appears almost immediately. The second takes several minutes. By the third, every ordinary rock begins looking shiny enough to make her pick it up twice. She starts making little piles, one for the dull stones, one for the almost shiny ones, one for the real treasures. Every time another silver pebble lands in the pile, she can't help but smile. 4, then 5, then 7. She wipes dirt from her forehead with the back of her sleeve before digging into another patch of stones. And then she finds it, the last shiny stone. It was tucked deep into the ground, under who knows how many rocks. She picks up all 10 of her shiny stones and sits them on the sled in an unorganized mess. Her arms become noodles, and she puts out a deep exhale as she falls onto the sled. "We did it, Frog Guy." She closes her eyes and feels the frog start to move forward. "Can you take me to the village? If not, I can walk." She speaks between breaths. "I'm going to buy that tiara, and then I don't know yet, but at least maybe I'll feel good for a little bit." She continues breathing heavily. Glurp. The frog continues onward. "Hey, why are you being so nice to me?" she asks, but of course the frog doesn't respond. "I appreciate it." The cart rolls into the village, most of the crab creatures starting to retreat into their houses. Amelie's eyes dart around in search of her crab friend, but they're all nearly identical. She'd never be able to find him. The bell rings as they enter the shop, the scent of dust hitting her nose immediately. Amelie darts to the podium where the tiara lays waiting for her. "Just in time. I was about to check out for the night. Fate chose this for you." The moss creature waits at the counter. "Just this." She unfurls her arms, dropping all the stones onto the counter and laying the tiara gently beside them. "Lady of the forest." He takes the stones. "This crown was made for you." What? Amelie narrows her eyes. "Do you mean that?" "Maybe. I don't remember how this crown got here. I say it's fate." Amelie's fingers tremble as she lifts the crown back up, her eyes returning to the shopkeeper. "Thank you," she whispers, bowing her head before leaving the store. She sits upon the sled, feeling her hair being blown wildly by the wind as the frog takes them back. The thought of placing the crown on her head is all she thinks. But something deep down inside of her is telling her to wait. The sunlight all but fully depletes as they enter back into the woods, the moonlight pointing straight to the stump she fawns for. "Brup," the frog says, laying down on all fours after he stops. "Thank you." Amelie pats the frog's head as she passes, taking a seat on the stump once more. She takes a deep breath, making eye contact with one of the owl spectators as she closes her eyes. 1, 2. She holds the tiara right above her head. Tick-ka, tick-cha. Her eyes shoot open once she hears it. The crab she spent so many hours with sprints over the dirt until it ends up at her feet, reaching its claws upwards. Amelie reaches downward, holding onto its claw. "You look happy," she says with a smile. "Tick-cha." The crab takes a few steps back, holding its claw over its strange rock baby creature. It watches, joining the audience as she retakes her seat. 1, 2. She takes a deep breath. 3. She feels the tiara settle itself upon her hair. The wind stops. The grass around her stills as if the entire field has forgotten how to move. A warm light washes over everything, soft enough that she can't tell whether it's coming from the sun or from somewhere much farther away. One deer steps into the field, then another and another. They emerge silently from every direction, each with great branching antlers crowned in flowers and silver vines. None of them seem surprised to find her there. They simply stand among the grass, watching with calm, gentle eyes. They approach her, forming a circle. Amelie doesn't move. She isn't afraid. The deer lower their heads together. The earth beneath her gives a quiet wooden creak. She looks down. The old tree stump she'd been sitting on slowly unfolds like the petals of a flower. Bark curls outward in careful strips, revealing a small wooden door hidden inside its heart. Golden light spills through the cracks before the little door swings open on its own. A warm breeze drifts out. It smells like wildflowers. A wall of light starts approaching from the distance, hailing from the ground up far into the sky. Tick, tick. The crab's eyes seem to go wide as the wall blocks all memories of it. Blurp, blup. The frog croaks blankly, fading behind the light wall. Soon enough, all that remains are the deer, her and the wall of light, now emanating an angelic noise. She takes a deep breath, making eye contact with one of the deer who bows its head at her. "I did it," she says under her breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She takes a deep breath, feeling important for once, before she opens her eyes. "I did it," she whispers again, getting to her feet. She pets one of the deer who shows no fear from her. She grabs the door handle that points upwards atop the stump, turning it to the right and pulling up the hatch. The door immediately drops into an empty blanket of black, nothing visible. She reaches her hand downward. It disappears into the darkness, but not feeling any different. She brings it back out, and it isn't damaged. "I did it." She closes her eyes, dropping her body into the opening. "Princess?" Abram's voice jolts Amelie's eyes back open. "Are you okay?" Amelie opens her eyes, yawning, picking herself up off the pile of books she had apparently been laying upon. "Where have you been?" He runs over, laying his paw on her hand. Amelie reaches upwards, feeling the fauna tiara still present on her head, and with a half-smile she speaks. "I was in this book." She lays it in front of him. "You were what?" He yowls, his ears going down. "I was in that book." She puts her hands together on her body. "No, no, no, princess," he growls. "You should never, and I mean never, enter a book without me knowing. Ever!" he screams. "Shh!" Amelie looks down at her feet, which she is moving idly. "You're going to upset Eknid," she whispers. "What if you had gotten lost in there, princess?" He shakes his head. "How would I ever have gotten you out? There's dozens of books in here." "It was a nice book," she mumbles. "It could have looked that way, and then been hiding a kidnapper or a giant library-stalking beast. But it didn't. Because you got lucky. Not once more, princess, from here on out." Silence sits between them. "Do you like my tiara?" Amelie awaits his response expectingly. "It is quite fashionable. I do." He huffs. "Come, we found the next book." Amelie feels a smile tug on her cheeks as she watches Abram strut down the aisles. We often carry other people's burdens, sometimes because we love them. Other times, it's to take the pain away. But those burdens are often what we should be proud of the most.